Hello, welcome back to another video, and let's get to it, to be honest. So, I have done the same thing I did last video, which was asking the same question, which was that one there. Right, so when I asked it the initial question I've asked so far in the last two previous videos, it came back with a different thing. Now this was quite interesting. So when it came back, this time it didn't come back with an error. It came back with effectively all the different parts of the kit. So the hi-hat, bass drum, high tom, low tom, etc. as you'll see in the picture soon. And what it did differently was this. So when you look, if you look on the actual description, it's got now specific cymbals for each drum. So if you look at the hi-hat, it's an X. If you look at the bass drum, I believe that's a 0 or an O. If you look at high tom, obviously a slash. Low tom, I think it's an asterisk, yeah. And then cymbal, so cymbals, I'm guessing that's either, because it's not specific, it's either a crash or it's either a ride cymbal. So I'm assuming that's probably a ride cymbal, I'd guess. So that's a Z. So what it's doing is it's now kind of working in the means of what most drum notation looks like. It's not all the same notes, and maybe an ASCII tab it might be slightly different, but on most notation it is the different notation, so you can basically differentiate what they are. So that's quite interesting. So then what I did was I asked the same question basically. Could you do it in 4/4 as Yarnak suggested last time? But this time I wanted to just test it a bit more and see what happens if I did it in 2 bars. So when I did that, it came back with this. You can see that it is still in 4/4, which is good, because it might have got confused, but it didn't. But the main difference is, and this is obviously where the computer doesn't really know specifically, or the interface, what it has to do, and judging it around the human limbs. So obviously it's got, that's 5 things to play all at the same time, and obviously, I mean, there's no open hi-hat, so I could probably use my foot, but ideally, not really, because I'll look like a weird monkey, you know what I mean? So, ideally not. But, so what I want to do is, I want to see, okay, so that's quite interesting. So if it can't seem to understand, is there a way I could try and simplify it? So this is where I asked it this one. Okay, so what I want to do is, since there was loads of inputs there and I can't physically play, as I said, I'm not a monkey, I basically want to see what happened if I asked it quite an obscure question like, could you simplify this? So I was interested to see what it would do to that. Would it change it visually, make it look better for me to read, or would it take a few parts out of the drum notation, basically saying, oh, okay, so he must not be able to play this, it's maybe a bit too technical for him, so let's just keep it with, 4 parts to it instead of 5. So I did that, and unfortunately it changed the visual aspect of it, but it still has all the 5 parts to play. So obviously for me, I'm thinking, well, I mean, that's interesting, because as I said, it's kept the same cymbals, so it's easier to read, but obviously the alignment's kind of a bit off, and there's still 5 bits to play. So what I'll do is, as I do every week, since there are 2 parts to play, what I'll do is this time, because there's 2 toms, so I'll play playing one tom part with the notation, and one part playing another tom. So obviously you've got the high tom and the low tom. So I'll do both versions, you can hear what it'll sound like, and obviously I'm going to take out the ride cymbal because I can't play that physically. So there you go, I hope you enjoy that. So this could be the playthrough. So obviously, since there are 2 ways I can play this with 2 different drums, what I'll do is I'll play it a few times going over with the low tom one, and then I'll just incorporate the high tom one. So let's get to it. Right, so you enjoyed that playthrough. So obviously this time we have two versions because there are two parts to play. But it's interesting to see that obviously it is actually evolving, it's learning, and I think it's more the visual aspect it's figuring out. It's like starting to understand that, you know, a hi-hat, a snare, they're not the same thing, so therefore you have to represent it differently. Because although I can understand that it's a system, so it's going to be thinking, right, well, I don't know if you understand that, you know what I mean? You can't assume with things like that, you need to kind of make it specific. So if you were going to give someone notation like me or another musician, you wouldn't go, well, I'm just going to mark it as X every time, because then they'll be able to read it. That's a stupid assumption, it won't work. So yeah, so I thought it was interesting. But what I'm going to do is now, as I say, I'm going to keep the first question as it is, just for a bit of time. And then if it starts to, you know, repeat itself a bit for the next couple of weeks and it doesn't really change, I'm going to stop asking it that question, because then obviously it's clearly got to the limit of what it can do there. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now start inputting a bit more specifics in the ASCII tab questions. So keep it all with the drums, but as I say, I want to see the difference between the progress from the ASCII tab question I asked last time and what it is now. But I'm going to ask some more specifics towards the drum tab instead of like an actual ASCII tab, as it is just basic. So it's definitely changing, definitely more interesting. As I say, it did much better on the 2-bar input than I thought it would, but it's obviously not necessarily there yet, but it's improvement. So let's have it. Next video, we'll ask a few more questions. As it was, we'll see how we go. So enjoy, LHP out.